After 6, education correspondent John Gerritsen has a report on the impact of all of this on the country's multi-billion-dollar foreign student industry and looks at any damage that may be accrued to the country's reputation. But first, we're going to ask the government for its view. Tertiary Education Minister Stephen Joyce has joined us now live in the studio in Auckland. Welcome, Minister. Nice to have you.
Hi, John. Good to see you.
What do you make of all of this?
Yeah, look, it's difficult, never easy, but we do have to have quite strong rules about who gets access to New Zealand education. And we've had these situations before. We had some Chinese students in the country in 2012 where there'd been some fraud cases in one of the visa processing situations, and they had to go home. This is the situation with about 40 at this point Indian students, where they've either their visa applications have found to be fraudulent since they've been in New Zealand, i.e. what happened before they came, and in some cases other things subsequent to them coming here, such as, in a few cases, criminal cases and so on. So it's not just a case of visa fraud.
But the vast majority of them are here as a result of paperwork done before they left India, right?
That's right.
And that's why they're under threat of deportation.
Yep.
So don't we have to get it right and stop them from coming in before we let them come, pay their fees, accrue debt, have dreams and then send them home?
Well, actually, that's the ideal, but the Indian market is a very challenging market, and it's not just for New Zealand. The Canadians have difficulty with it, Australia, the US, all the English language and what you might call apart from the US, the Commonwealth countries that do a lot of international education do get some difficulties in the Indian market, quite a lot of fraud. And we actually do have to be clear. We have to have a system that is effective and that where the standards are set for everybody. We can't just have one group saying, "Oh well, look, and we're really sorry that our agents behaved badly, but we want to stay here regardless."
Yeah, the issue is though. I'm looking at you, revelling in the success of New Zealand as an international tourist destination. Here's an op-ed that you wrote for the New Zealand Herald in May 2016. Attracting international students is not just about revenue for the host university. You go on. Most importantly, international students provide lifelong social, cultural and economic links with the countries from whence they came.
Very important to us.
Many become ambassadors for New Zealand.
That's right.
Well, these guys are going to go home and say, we were shafted by New Zealand. We were treated disgracefully. We arrived in good faith. Our immigration agent was a schmuck. And we have paid the cost.
Yeah, well, I think that is difficult because ultimately the students are responsible for what is submitted on their behalf. And there's plenty of, the agents will say it's the provider's fault, the providers will say it's the agent's fault or the student's fault, and the agents will say it's the student's fault or the provider's fault. But actually we do have to have a responsibility. People must fill out their forms correctly, make their applications correctly. They must make the right... these aren't trivial things. These aren't somebody just saying...
No, absolutely. So where are we telling them this? Where are we saying in India, be careful if you're using agents? Own the filling out of forms.
We do it constantly. And in fact, we turn down around 38 or 40% of all applications for visas from Indian students in India because of the level of fraud that applies.
So their fraud got through. They were allowed in.
Well, yeah, I don't want to characterise all 41 of them as on this basis because there's been different reasons. But yeah, in some cases, yes.
Okay. So the fraud of their agent, sorry, not their fraud, the fraud of their agent got through.
Well, yeah, I think that's one way of characterising it.
Yeah, but isn't the punishment disproportionate? They are here now, they are studying, they are living here, they have paid their fees. Wouldn't it just be the decent and compassionate and empathetic thing to say, okay, there is an exception, you can continue to study?
Well, unfortunately, for the integrity of our system, for actually being fair to everybody that gets turned down, for the 200-odd Chinese students that had to go back 3 years ago because of a similar circumstance, we actually have to be consistent and fair to everybody. And I'm sorry it's happened, but I don't think that New Zealanders would be happy for people to be fraudulently in the country. They haven't been able to supply the right information, and therefore they haven't been able to come to New Zealand in the way that we offer them the opportunity to come and be students here. We get 22,000 students from India each year, around that. It's a significant number. It's unfortunate this has happened. There's another instance running at the moment as well, which is concerning me. But we do have, unfortunately, some difficulties from countries like India where there is fraud. It's not just the New Zealand case, but as I say, in these other countries have experienced the same thing.
So This looks like a big industry. Stephen Joyce, you, the Minister, 9th of July 2016. Record international students enrolment.
It's our fifth largest export industry. There's no doubt about it.
Right.
Just behind the wood processing industry, for what it's worth.
Okay, don't we have to get it right?
We do. But you can't just sort of say that. No, it's unfair to say, particularly when you compare with the challenges that other countries experience in some of these markets, like India as well, is that it is actually a constant battle.
But aren't we always saying that? I mean, gosh, aren't you having a bob each way, Minister? We want Indian students to come here and study, don't we? Do we?
We want Indian students to come here and study on the basis that we have agreed to allow them access to the New Zealand education system.
So why do you keep talking about the difficulties of the market if you want them?
Because we say, if you're coming in to study at this level, if you have a certain level of English language competency, and if you have money that is sufficient to look after you while you're here in New Zealand, as prescribed by the regulations, then you are invited to come. And unfortunately, some people have come here without those three things, but perhaps have fraudulently obtained documents that support what they are saying that they're able to do, and yet subsequently they can't. And of course, the other side of this is we have occasionally, as you've seen in New Zealand, once they get here, if they don't have sufficient money, they are vulnerable to being exploited by unscrupulous employers.
Although that's not the case with these people.
Not the case with these people, but in terms of the system overall, making sure the system works properly, we do actually have to have those rules.
Right, so they will be watching this or listening to this. What do you say to them?
Oh, I'm very sorry that this has happened. I really am. But unfortunately, in the case of these examples, we do have to be consistent with everybody else that comes to New Zealand. And I'm sorry they have to go home. But
they do have to go home. They will be deported.
Well, they have the normal processes of appeal, which I don't want to get in the way of, because there's individual circumstances, and you can't just, the Minister can't just say, well, these 41. The reality is that they, and I know they will, apply, some of them will apply for for exemptions and these sorts of things. But in the context of the rules that we have, it's important that everybody understands that New Zealand has certain requirements to come in to get an international education in New Zealand, which is all about ensuring the student is supported and encouraged while they're here. And unfortunately in this case, and it may have been unscrupulous agents, but ultimately everybody's responsible for the papers they sign.
Stephen Joyce, Tertiary Education Minister, thank you for joining us this evening. We appreciate your time.